Hello everybody, my name is Christian Quick, and welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be talking about hierarchy and instances, a little bit of if statements, and the if-else statement. So it's a little bit of a wrap, but we're going to try and make it simple as possible in a sense, because they can be a little complicated in a moment. So let's go into our onPlace block, and what we're going to do is we're just going to get rid of the whole thing because I don't need it to do that. If you want to keep it, you can keep it, but I'm just gonna get rid of it. So what's special about instances? So to do an instance, you're gonna need to make an if statement. If statement basically just means if you have this is the condition, and then inside of all of this is the result, right? And your if-else statement just means you're going to have to write the word else at the end, and this basically says what's inside of your else is basically everything that is not this condition. So then this would be the opposite result. This is the best way I would say to, I definitely spelled that wrong, but this is the best way to think of your if-else statements. So what about hierarchy? What is hierarchy, and what even is an instance? So an instance comes down to a couple things. Common ones like world, living. Oh my gosh, when I see entity, my heart just explodes because of the amount of times I used it. World is like a second best. If you see something that has a world file, you can basically do anything with it. So they are a little bit crazy. These smaller ones are really unspecified. And also, like, if I say, like, item stack, right? What's odd about this is I can say living entity instance of player, and then I can say get item stack. So this not being here is, to me, it's like, even if it wasn't here, I still have a way to get an item stack. Same goes for block state and block position with world.get block state and get block position. So that's why having these ones are, like, pretty good. And even for an entity, like, if you have world, you can basically say instance of, if the world has, get closest player, and then the player be, you have that. But I've been mentioning a bunch of stuff, but I've not been doing anything. So let's start. So how do I know if I say, inside of this, I basically want to say whatever I have up here. So I want an instance of one of my parameters. Let's choose the world because the world is an easier one for now. And so let's say I have world, and then I want to say instance of, and then I need an instance of the world. And I can find out what these instances are by clicking on world, hitting Control H, and then it says I have two instances, server world and client world. Now, the methods that you have are going to be different, right? So let's say that if I got rid of this for a second, and we'll write it in a second again. Let's say I wanted inside of this, because remember, this is your result of the method, right? So if I said I wanted to change time of day when I place a block, and then we're going to do another one, and this is going to basically be change players game mode, and then we're going to do back, we don't have to quote it, back and forth between game modes for every placement. Now I can get even more specific where I could say after specifically the 7th placement, only the 7th placement, I could do things like that, but this is going to be a little whack. So let's say I said world, right? So I wanted to do world, and then I would just be like, what is it? Change, what it would be like, it would be set time of day. And you'll notice that it's not here. And that's really unfortunate. Let's just put this here for now. I know it's going to be an error. Now let's try it with the instance. So if I say if, and then I say world, instance of, and let's do the server world, because that's what it is. After you write a class, you are now making a more specific this. So after whatever specific class, you're going to need a specific variable name for it. So let's say the server world, so let's just call it server world. Makes it real nice and simple. And inside of this, let's say server world dot, and oh, look at that first one. It already knows what I'm talking about. And so automatically you can see the difference of I took the world, said if I'm talking about specifically the server world, it gave me time of day. Now if I just said, I could say like 600, 1200. This is about ticks. This is written in ticks, but don't worry about that. What's important right now is that world.setTimeOfDay does not work, but world instance of server world, the server world has access to methods that your regular world does not. So it's pretty good to keep track of when you have stuff like that. So learning about your instances is very important because, like I said, you have access to commands that you wouldn't have before. So living entity is talking about everything. So if I wanted to say, placer dot, and then I can say like change game mode, it doesn't even say anything about game mode. So what if I just say game mode is part of game events, and stuff like that. So that's terrible, right? So let's say I wanted to say living entity, if placer instance of, right? And then it's like, what is it called? If you remember, you click on living entity, Control H, and we're going to be taking a player's game mode because player is the only thing with a game mode. So we're going to obviously have to call the player entity. So let's go into player entity, and then we can call this player. And then if I say I have to do this. Then if I say player dot, and then I can say game mode. There's get game profile. That's a new one because I believe actually before I made the instance, that was not there. If I said placer dot game, yeah, it doesn't have game profile. So now we've accessed another method. But it didn't. It's not telling us, get game profile. You can usually test it out like this, and then you can be like game, mode, but it's not working. So what's the problem here? How does a player change his game mode? Well, it turns out, there's some more instances of player entity, and if I go on it, there's probably a lot more than you think. So now we're going to try the server player entity as an example. And if I say if player instance of server player entity, and then I'll just say server player, and we go inside of here, I can say server player dot, and there it is, change game mode. And then it's asking me for the game mode, so I'm going to put it in, and let's say game mode creative. Cool. So we have now completed the first part of our task. So actually, let's, like this. Change a player's game mode. Beautiful. So now we want to make it so that we have to change it back and forth between game mode for every placement. Now that sounds really complicated. But all we have to do is basically say like this. So let's say I say if, and then I can say the server player entity dot, there's is creative, right? So if I am creative, let's put in these, and I can say server player change game mode, and then we'll say game mode dot survival. And we'll put a little this at the end here, and then I'm just gonna get rid of this right here. So let me show you another thing. So let's say I said if, right? If you ever put an explanation point before whatever it is you're talking about, So I can say server player dot is creative. Automatically, what this is basically saying is if the server player is in creative, change it to survival. If the server player is in creative, and then I can say is not in creative, then we can say change it to survival. Oh, well, let's change this one to creative. So now it makes sense that we would jump back and forth between survival and creative. So let's join the world now that we've made this long instances, and let's see how everything's working so far, in which the world should be set to this time of day, and if I'm creative, it should bounce me back and forth. Alright, and here we are in our beautiful Minecraft world. So, the sun is, probably around noon, which is a lot of ticks. It should probably be around here. So I'm going to place it, and the sun should go over there, and then I should go into creative. So let's place it on the ground. Boom, there's the sun up there, and I am now in creative. So then if I break it and I place it again, you would think that because we said if I'm not in creative, it's going to put me in survival, right? Wrong. It will not. Now, why would it possibly do that? All right. So it turns out I told a little bit of a fib, and the fib was not the explanation part. I'm actually serious. That does mean if not, but what the problem is that I have is creative and then saying is not creative, and it's going to basically take one of them, it's going to read one of them, and then it's going to ignore the other one when you have two contradictions in the same if statement. What we need to do is we basically need to write in else. And then like this. Else if. You actually don't need the if statement if you actually have the else or the entire not creative. I would suggest saying just else and then leaving it like this. So basically, now it's basically saying, if the server player is in creative, then we're going to put him in survival. If he's not if otherwise, under any other condition, I like how I worded it, I said you're going to get the opposite result in an if statement. And the opposite of being in survival, I basically said is creative. So it's not like the opposite, but it's basically saying the opposite of this. So that is a proper way to put in something when you have two statements that are going to be opposite of each other, is to make that else statement. You don't even have to write this twice. Just put it in the brackets and then put in your code. And right there, you should be all set. So over here, we can see that we have our wonderful on-placed method, all nicely done. And so now, if I restart the world and we can join into it, it should put us back and forth between every placement. So I'm just going to back up, and then we're going to have this. So let's join the world again and see if this is correct. All right, here we are. I'm in creative. I'm going to place it down. I'm in survival. I'm in creative. I'm in survival. I'm in creative. So we can definitely say at this point it's definitely working, and that makes me happy. Sorry I told you a little fib, but it's about the learning experience. Because the thing is, there's a lot of times where the code will tell you, yes, there are no errors in this code. And then you try and do it, and when nothing happens, well, something's wrong. Something may not be causing any errors where it's going to crash the game, which is what the IntelliJ is most concerned about. But other than that, that is generally it. Let's come back to the code so we can point out a couple more things. So I actually have a hierarchy table at the side here, which is really nice. You can go up or down. I don't normally use these. I just usually use the whole because what happens when you have the up and down is it'll tell me everything that's coming from and everything that's going forward if I decide to go through. Actually, if I even wanted to say instance server player entity instance of fake player, that would be something. But we're not going to be worried about fake players. Now remember, an entity, if you ever see entity at the top here, just normal entity, you can say instance of living entity. So entity is basically the largest. So it starts as an object because an entity. So if my thing says entity up here, I have access to everything that could possibly be done with an entity. And then here we have living entity. which is pretty cool. Let's put this back because the air is going to give me a stroke. So in a living entity, we can say that it's the player, the armor stands. Well, you wouldn't necessarily call a mix-in. But you also have your mob entity. So if I wanted to affect a certain mob, right? So if I wanted to say, you know, do something to phantoms or do something to specifically gas, I can do that. For ambient entities, you got your bat, your slime, you have your magma cube. Your path aware, this one's going to get a little crazy. So your path aware, then you have your lay, your golems. Funny enough, did any of you guys know that the shulker counts as a golem? I have no idea why, but he does. We don't create him, so I'm not too sure why he's called a golem, but he is. But you got your snow golem, your iron golem, your water creature entities, which is like your fish. You got your puffer fish, your schooling fish entity, and you have all those. Your squid. So here we have the trader llama entity, right? And if you wanted to do something to this trader llama, and it says living entity, does this mean that I'm going to have to say entity, go to mob entity, instance of pathaware entity, instance of passive, instance of animal, instance of abstract, horse entity, abstract donkey entity, llama entity, trader llama entity? If you had to write an if statement every time you had to instance something, my head would literally just explode and I couldn't handle it. So the answer is you do not have to do that. You can actually take and you can actually skip it. So let's get rid of one of our last brackets here. And then let's go and just skip like this. So basically, all I really did is I basically said placer, instance of server player entity. And what I did is I basically just skipped over player, and I skipped over player and said server player entity. So I just skipped player entity, and this should be perfectly fine. Unless some sort of berserk error tells you otherwise, I've never had a problem skipping classes like this. So if you end up having an issue skipping a class, let me know. But you can actually go all the way down the chain. So if I wanted to say, actually, living entity, you know, if I said, you know, let's use our little brains here. You know, so I can say if placer, and then I can say instance of llama entity, and then I can say llama. Just like that, I've scooped up all of the stuff. Now, llamas can't place blocks, so there's absolutely no methods that I can do. Oh, never mind. Huh. Attack. Living entity target. Then I can say, wait, can I not say target? Now, living entity. Let's say placer. Pull progress. 1.0f. Boop. So, if it was ever possible that the placer was a llama, it's going to attack itself as a placer. Now, this is one of those things where this doesn't make sense. It's silly code in that kind of case. This clearly wouldn't work. But you know what? If you wanted to go crazy out there, there's nothing stopping you from doing this. But like, this couldn't possibly happen because first off, the placer cannot be a llama because llamas cannot place blocks. But the fact that you can skip all of them is the point that I'm trying to make to you, and that you can put code such as let the llama attack himself, which is also a silly thing that can happen, but whatever, boat makes your goat float, right? So with that in mind, I think that I've basically covered everything about the basics of hierarchy. If you just want to know something, or maybe you feel that there's a method that you're looking for and it's not there, just kind of go into whatever it is that you're looking for. So we have the world file, right? And then let's say I wanted to do another thing. There is a bunch of methods that you can do. So you got, you know, is sleeping enabled, send sleeping status, update, tick weather. This is some pretty boring stuff. But let's say I could be like, hold on, let's see if I can like, let's say I wanted to say wake. Can I do wake sleeping players, please? So if you wanted to do world, you place the block and everyone who's sleeping is just going to wake up. If you wanted to put that on your block, you'd probably upset a lot of the players that you're making the mod for, but I think it'd be kind of funny. You just gotta do whatever, you feel is right. I'm not gonna stop you because I don't know what you're coding. And the purpose of my tutorials is to not only teach you how to code in Minecraft stuff, but also try and teach you to work, to make yourself use your own brain so you can make your own stuff, have fun, do stuff like that. Real good. But other than that, this is practically all the basics really needed. I'm gonna take this out before I forget about it. This is really much all the basics that you need. If you did miss my previous video, I know it's 47 minutes long, but there are some things that I will explain that I won't explain twice. That's why I wanted to use the if statements and instances and stuff like that, because this is very, knowledgeable stuff. I wouldn't say that's important, but it is very useful to know. So yes, it is important. So there are things that I'll explain, but I won't explain, twice in a sense. So like every time we make a new block, I don't tell you how to make the block states, the models, the textures. You should already know how to do that. I don't tell you to put it in the my item group anymore. And eventually I'll probably tell you to just make a custom class rather than showing you how to make a custom class. So the more I teach and the more you follow through, the more it's going to be easier for me to just tell you to do something. And you should generally know what I'm talking about. So keeping a track on the series is it's my personal little series, and I have things stuck in here for a reason. I do ramble a lot, kind of like how I'm doing right now, but it happens. And also, if you have any questions, I do have my comment section. I'll try and get to you to the best I can, but no guarantees. But with that in mind, that is going to wrap up today's video. So, yeah, I'm not in the Minecraft game, so let's fix that. Alright, this feels a lot better to say goodbye to you while looking at my own face. So, that's going to be it for this video. So, thank you guys so much for watching, and without further ado,